For today, you get the honors, buddy.
For today, we've all been looking forward to having Chitra. Chitra is, as we all know, a little bit of a superstar in most of this region. We're so excited to have her on beta. We've been lining up Chitra, and I've been working on her bio and her profile for what we wanted to have her in Chiang Mai.
That's right.
Several times this year. We wanted it was scheduled for February, for September, but now here we are in our third version of this, and it happens to be online. Chitra has been doing some incredible work. Everybody has here and in our community has been following her growth. KBR is doing wonderful things, and I'm excited that on Tuesday, which is a product day, she's going to talk about this product. How do you make deals? How do you make deals with one of the largest distribution platforms that you could ever hope to be on when you're growing a little media startup? I'm really excited to hear from you, Chitra. I'm going to turn this over to you.
That smile looks exactly the same. The smile on the slide and the smile I see over there, exactly the same. So wonderful to have you here.
Okay, thank you very much for welcoming me, for having me as well. Let me just prepare my presentation a little bit. Okay, can anyone see?
It's coming right up. Yep.
Please tell me that's your dog.
Yes.
In the background.
I have 2 dogs.
How wonderful.
So this is the presentation that I prepared for Splice Beta for today. A little bit introduction for KBR, because not all of you might know KBR. So we started in 1999. The founder is here somewhere on the list of participants of today's session. Hi, Mas Tosca. We started out as a radio project under an NGO fighting for freedom of expression. And then we were launched in 1999 as a radio news agency, because the aim was to open up access of information for all Indonesians. So we worked together we started out with a network of 7 radio stations. Back then in 1999, it was the time of cassettes and dial-up internet. So it was very hard for us to send the news out there. So we grow stronger now until today, 2020. It's 21 years. We're as old as Malaysia Kini as well. We're now broadcasting via satellite and also on internet streaming. We have a network in 34 provinces. We have partnership with 500 radio stations, and we have 6-hour daily programming with various news formats. For the longest time, we stay true to our values: humanity, democracy, social justice, tolerance, and also with all the content that we produce, we want to push for public empowerment as well. So this is our story as a radio network. But then we go back 2 years a little bit. This is when 2018 was the time when we decided that we want to do podcasts seriously. I mean, like seriously, because we need to survive as a media business. For radio station, it's a sunset industry, while at the same time the digital world is growing and promising. We can see that from the ads distribution, it's getting bigger on the digital and smaller on the radio side. So we need to survive by doing something on the digital platform, which also showcase our strength and our love on audio and quality journalism. So this is how we sell ourselves, Podcast for Curious Minds. This is the value proposition that we have for our audience. We produce daily, weekly, and also season-based podcasts. Some of them are repurposed contents from the radio network programs, but we also do podcast-only contents, both in-house production and also collaborative podcast. One of our earliest partners in producing podcasts is communities. We have here is Cek Fakta and also Diskusi Psikologi, where we talk about psychological things with young people, and also fact-checking podcast. and we also produce ambitious projects. Of course, we want to stay true and show the quality content that we can produce. So along from 2018, when we decided to focus more on podcasts, and then we produce our first narrative series of podcasts. It's called Hidup Usai Teror. It follows a story on children whose parents are suicide bombers or people who were committed with terrorism acts. We do this story, and then it was recognized and mentioned in a regional conference held by the Association of Independent Journalists. And on October 2019, we held our very first podcast party with both activities. We want to showcase ourselves as the first mover. At the moment, the podcast scene in Indonesia is growing, but not many are doing what we do with journalism-based, with rigorous storytelling. Most of them are Q&A and entertainment stuff. And then on October 2019, this is where we first met Spotify Southeast Asia team. They came to the event, and then we introduced ourselves, blah, 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 all the normal stuff that we do when we met someone as big as Spotify. And then we continued the conversation on emails and video calls when Spotify mentioned their interest in doing originals with us. At that time, Spotify was acquiring some of the most popular podcasts that we have at that moment on February 2020. So we kind of like thinking, what kind of pitch should we go with Spotify? Because this is not their want to acquire us as like a company, no, but they want us to pitch a content. So what kind of content should we pitch to them? Because at the same time, when we see the podcast chart on Spotify, we have this kind of list on the top chart: entertainment, funny stuff, comedy, and also horror and religious. And none of them are news. So when we go back to our team, we are starting to thinking, what should we do? Do we do news or not news? And if we don't do news, which is our core, how do we stay true to ourselves? How do we reflect our values that we believe in in the contents that we produce? And also we also discuss in the team who is the main target for this podcast. Spotify also stressed for several times that they want to reach out the big part of the audience, which is female and 18 to 24 years old. And this is not our main target in our daily life. So this is also something that makes us really think hard. This is out of our comfort zone. And also we started to think about the niche. What are the strengths that we want to show off? Because at that time, we don't know who are we competing with. We don't know. Spotify mentioned that they also reach out for other media companies to do podcast originals as well, but they don't say who they are. So it's kind of like we have to put ourselves correctly and pitch something that shows who we are as well. So this is something that we come up after several discussions within the team. Asrul, who is the producer and who has this idea, is also part of this session. Hello, Asrul. So dearest, the main concept is love letters. It's an old-fashioned. We don't write love letters these days, but then podcast is a modern thing. So we try to combine this old-fashioned thing with the modern touch on podcast. And we also want to create this love letter, not just to a person, but also to an idea. For example, one can write a letter to like Mother Earth or something. This is what we have in mind. So another concept that we are doing with Dear Dearest is the letter is written and read by celebrities. And at the end, after the celebrities read the letters, then they will have a brief chit chat. exploring about the letters, the content, and blah blah blah. So we think it's a good idea for me, for example, as as a fan, to learn more about my idol. So the inspiration for this podcast is Modern Love, but we want to have a little tweak by having this Q&A between celebrities. We pitch for 26 episodes, each is 20 to 30 minutes. For Spotify, when we pitched this idea, we pitched two ideas. This one was the one selected by Spotify. For Spotify, this ticks many boxes. It's a chill listening for at night, in the evening. It's relevant for female audience. It has the celebrity component and also engagement component, because when the letter is written and read by celebrities, then we are reaching out to uh, both fan base, both the writer and the reader. And it's 20 to 30 minutes, so we try to have a bigger retention rate for them to stay on the podcast. So after we secured this deal, we went back and forth about the concept of this podcast. How are we going to do that? And then we go back to the team and have further internal discussion. How are we going to do this? How do we pick the writers? How do we choose the readers? How do we pair them up? What kind of topics? Because Spotify's also, as I said, stressed that it's important to reach female audience 18 to 24. So we want to do lovey-dovey kind of letters. So, but with only lovey-dovey, is it enough? Is it what the Indonesian podcast listeners are looking for? Or can we try to push and intrigue them with other contents as well? And then other discussion is, how do we want this podcast to sound? Because with the current podcast scene in Indonesia, we have Q&A, just a chit chat, a bunch of guys talking about stuff, but not really something crafted. So we also discuss, how do we want to sound? We work together with a producer from Spotify, fully remote working, and it's also from different cultural backgrounds as well. So we are searching for common grounds throughout the discussion, from picking up the writers, readers, and also what kind of the letters and how they sound at the end of the journey. And then the launching time, August 5, we were launched all together with the other 3 originals. So this is when we finally know who were we competing with back then. So Pembunuh Berantai was coined from a serial killer, a popular podcast from Parcast. Lenyap is a new original, and also Kisah Horor is also a horror story. 3 of them were produced by Fremantle. So we nailed, they only deal with other than Fremantle, and Fremantle is a huge company. But we were super happy because according to Spotify, they only have like 5 to 10 episodes with the others. And then with Dear Dearest, we have 26 episodes. So it's a big deal for us. So this is where we are now. We're very, very happy with the how it comes out with the numbers. It's a very huge number for us compared to our normal daily, weekly podcast that we produce. We have the biggest number, I think, because we are playing with the celebrity and engagement thing. We also have this dedicated social media with a specific design. We work with interns to do this. And we are now on number 27 on top podcast. And also we had our momentum as number 1 on trending podcast. And with Dear Dearest, we touch the audience that Spotify requested, which is female, and also 18 to 22 years old. So it's a good thing for us. What we've learned so far with our collaboration, so we need to it's a really steep learning curve for us in both production, marketing, and also teamwork within our team as well. So we need to scrutinize all elements from the title, the description, the audio production, structure of podcast, the trailer, everything, the logo. We went back and forth for the logo, and also the hard work continues after its launch. So we follow up the statistic, and then we learn from episode after episode which to be further, what kind of further action that can we do. For example, for we are now on episode 6, and we'll tweak here and there with the episode 6, and then as we see a growth of audience, we are revising all the previous episodes so we can maintain a new audience to come. So this is how we learn about our audience with our content and the way they interact with our content. And on marketing side, it's I think it's also a benefit for Spotify to work with KBR because we have a network. We have a network of radio stations which we can leverage on radio stations and also on social media. So we collaborate with some of our closest partners, and they also do promotion for Dirdiras. And to have social media handle or not to have, it was also a discussion whether we want to have a dedicated social media or not. And so we decided to have, because we also want to try experiment with this, because previously with our previous contents, we put all together under KBR social media handle, but this is the only podcast which has own social media handle. And we also work with different teams on Spotify. We work with the production team. We work with the marketing team, with the public relation team, and also with Spotify Music. One of the advantage that we are working with the Spotify is within the Spotify itself, they also collaborate with Spotify Music. So we have two big musicians. It's Raisa and Nadine Amiza, who writes and reads the letter, and the Dear Dearest episode was put on their music playlist. So it's a good thing for us to reach for non-podcast listeners. And other thing that we learn internally for as teamwork, it's a very big, ambitious, long-term project that we are doing with Spotify. It's important to build trust, whether it's between Spotify and KBR, and also within our own team to trust our skills and capabilities in doing things. And having a mix of skills on our team is also crucial. With someone with specific skill is good. With someone who also understands the whole process is also crucial. And we want to, with this teamwork, what we have so far is we manage expectation between two parties, of both KBR and Spotify. And also, I think this is one of the first time that we do serious stuff with project management tools. We use Trello rigorously. So this is something new for us, but because usually you just do it traditionally, and we have this going on during the COVID era, so we have to do it all things remotely, other than the taping of the letter, of course. So that's it. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Let's do some talking. Thank you, Alan and Rishad.
Hey, wow, that was amazing. I've got a whole bunch of questions over here.
You're not done yet. That was wonderful.
That's right. We're not letting you off yet. Hey, before I jump into all the questions, all fantastic questions, by the way, in the chat box, how did you decide not to do a news podcast?
I think this is also something that the Spotify team was asking, because when we send the pitch, the first reply from them is, aren't you not doing news production on your daily basis? So I think this is also one of the decision that we made, because we are tapping the new horizon for us, a female 18 to 22. would they be interested in news, the hardcore news that we do every day or not? One of the pitches that we have discussed internally is like having this why don't we do a podcast on news updates on Korean pop culture, because K-pop is very popular. But
Nice.
but
What a good idea.
yeah, but thinking through, can we do it ourselves? Do we have the capacity on
Mm.
following up K-pop things? And then another pitch that we do is a traveling podcast, a traveling culinary history podcast. So it's something that we love as well. But then Spotify did not choose that because they think it's not the time for them to do field reporting kind of podcast. So they choose Dear Dearest instead. With Dear Dearest, we also discussed it internally before we send the pitch. We can like put our values in the letters, in the way we choose the writers and the readers. For example, one of the letters that we have is on body positivity. It was written by an extra large model, and it was being read by an actress whose movie was on that topic as well. So we try to push our value smoothly with that kind of love letter. It's harmless.
Oh, that's spectacular. I mean, that kind of editorial oversight is very rare to find. How wonderful. Listen, I'm going to ask, we've got a lot of questions coming in here, Chitra. So this is very exciting. Podcasters, man.
Podcast.
So listen, because, Sanjay, please jump in with your question about radio versus podcasting. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Chitra.
Hello.
Thank you, Rashmi. So we were just wondering, like, if you were doing a lot of programming for radio and then you were trying to build an audience using podcasts, was there a difference in your approach when it came to, say, structuring the narrative, or on how you did the reporting, or was it roughly the same? And I guess, was the storytelling the same, or did it change over time, or did you intentionally do something differently? Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's an advantage to start doing podcasts with when you have radio background, because you have the basic skills, basic knowledge, basic quality check with audio and things like that. But yes, we do something. Some things are similar. Some things we try to be more creative and try to experiment things, something new. So we also listen to a lot of podcasts, try to grasp any ideas. For example, we just recently published this new podcast called Gambut Bakisa. It's on peatland, so it's a very delicate subject, talking about peatland in 12 episodes. And in one of the episodes, we try another approach by doing a personification of this peatland. So we create an episode doing an imaginary discussion interview with the peatland. So it's not something that you can do on radio because it doesn't sound so common. With radio, we have to break every like 15 minutes for ads breaks and everything. So with podcasts, we can go on without, and we try to keep it not too long, because based on the 2018 survey on podcasts in Indonesia, people could last around 20 minutes. So we try to stick around to that duration. So the storytelling, if you ask whether it or not it's the same or not, we do both. Some of the podcasts we do the same thing as we do on radio, but also we try to do things differently. We want to experiment and test this kind of approach to our audience as well, because the current audience in Indonesia is just too absorbed with the Q&A, funny, comedy, horror stuff. They are not used to storytelling stuff at the moment. So we try to introduce new formats for audience as well.
It's very good. Jane, you've got like, a whole bunch of questions. So I'm not going to try to attempt to summarize that for you. Why don't you jump on and ask those questions, Jane?
Hi. Sorry, I was just putting some washing in the machine and I heard my name and ran back. I do have lots of questions. We've just started up, we have had podcasts going at the Spin-Off for some time, but they've all been chat-based podcasts. I've recently come on as the podcast manager there to try and take us to the next level. And we're starting to move into some more produced podcasts. So I'm just curious to know how you fund the production of those podcasts that require more resources. That's one of my questions.
Okay. Okay. So with our podcast, we currently have a total of 30 podcasts. Some are daily, weekly, and also season-based. So for the daily podcast, it's a repurposed content from our radio program. So it's easy. We have it all digital. With the weekly, we also work together with sponsors to create this podcast. For example, we have this popular podcast called Visco. So we started with this community called Into the Light. We talk about suicide prevention. So it's also another delicate content that we are doing with our podcast. So for the first season, we do it just all together. We just go work hand in hand with Into the Light and producing this podcast episodes after episodes. And then after we get a certain number of audience, we can sell it to the clients, and then we get them coming from one episode, from one season, and then for smaller episodes. So this is how we fund our contents. And also for this ambitious project like the series of Hidup Usai Teror, this is something that we took it out of our own money, from the company's money, because we also want to produce something strong that really showcase our quality content journalism on podcasts. And we're so happy that because this podcast was not only mentioned on the regional conference, but also won an award from the UNICEF. So it's a good thing for us.
Yeah, very good. Can I throw in another question?
I love that. Please do. Please go ahead. You're on a roll. Do it.
I was just wondering how you measure your listenership against other local podcasts. I don't know how it is here, but here in New Zealand, we can see charts, but they include all the international properties as well. We know what our listenership is, but we don't know what our competitors' listenership is. So we don't know where we fit in the local market in terms of, say, approaching sponsors and so on.
Yeah, so it's also something that we don't know how big the number of our neighbor podcasts, things like that. And from the podcast chart, we can only see the rank. We don't see the number, right? But then if we go like stalking to their social media handles and everything, sometimes they share how many followers, how many views, listens, and everything. So this is something that so this is how we set the benchmark for listenership. For comedy, it can reach up to like 3 million plays. This is something that we cannot reach. With comedy, and even with something, the #1 podcast in Indonesia, like for weeks and weeks, I think for several months now, it's produced by a 21-year-old girl, a monologue, like contemplative letter to herself, something like that. It's on #1.
Wow.
Like, okay. And like a couple of months ago, she shared that her listenership was 3 million. Okay, good for you. And
Amazing.
With the current collaboration that we have with Spotify, we were able to have a sneak peek to our fellow originals. how they are doing, how are they good, and how are we good, and how can we elevate ourselves in terms of the numbers. We are good, but we still have to work on the retention rate, because well, in Spotify you have the statistic of start and stream. The start is big, but our stream is a little bit lower. So we need to work on that. That's why we changed the structure of the podcast. Like for episode 1, 2, 3, we have this structure, and then the retention rate is not good. And then we discuss with the Spotify producer, and then we tweak a little bit on the structure of the podcast. When it shows a good growth, then we are changing the structure for the previous episode. So it's continuous. I was thinking like, okay, let's do this very early on and just publish, and then hope for the best. But that's not how it works.
Right. Oh, that's
Chitra,
great.
I'm going to jump in with another question. Thank you for that. From another podcaster, Raven, you've got questions about team and workflow. Go for it.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Hi. Sorry. I've been having a lot of problems with the audio. So hi, Citra. Thanks so much for sharing. So I think my question is mainly to do with the production side. So I'm interested to know, right, how big is your production team in general for the whole KBR? Is there like a podcast team, or is there a radio team, or they are all working together? And another question I also want to know is like, what is your production period and workflow like for Dear Dearest? How long does it take to produce one episode? And is there a difference between producing like the production period and workflow for this Spotify podcast as opposed to the other news podcasts you guys are doing? Yeah, thank you. Trying to get everything in one go.
Okay.
Good job.
Okay, lots of questions to answer. Okay, so
Team size, workflow.
how big is our team? So KBR, because we started out as radio station, we have radio news updates on daily basis. We have our radio network to cater. So, and at the same time, we have this podcast. We have a mix of team. So, sorry to say that we don't have the luxury yet to have a dedicated podcast team or
What
dedicated
do you
radio
do with
team.
your audience?
We have a mix of team. Some of the producers are doing both radio daily and also podcast. But with the Dear Dearest, we try to have a different approach. We create a dedicated team because we also want to compare within ourselves which one works best, to have a dedicated team focused on from A to Z, or with a mixed team who do this and that, and how does it affect the growth of the podcast itself. So we also want to do that internally. How big is our team? KBR newsroom is 30 people, both from me until the report and all reporters. And also, so that also hopefully answers your second question, whether they work dedicated or not. Some are working dedicated, but mostly not. For the workflow, because we are working with Spotify, who really knows what they want. With other partners, sometimes they're not sure what they want, but they want to try with podcasts. They need our guidance in what to do, blah, blah, blah. And working with podcasts also challenge us in refining the way we present ideas, the way we present our audio mixing, blah, blah, blah. So because they have certain quality level that we have to achieve. It's not saying that other partners are having lower quality, but with Spotify, they have this big audience that they want to reach and want to use our podcast as a tool to reach. So it's a big learning process, I think, for Spotify as well, because this is the first time they do Spotify Originals, and they decided to do with a small organization like KBR compared to Fremantle. So this is both learning process for us as well. Understanding the Indonesian podcast listeners, understanding the how the celebrity and the fan works in Indonesia, and all of that stuff. For us, it's also it's more common to work with activists, with government officials, rather than celebrities with all this whole long contract of do's and don'ts and everything. So it's also experience for us as well.
Cool. Hui, why don't you jump in with your question about audience engagement?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Chitra, for the very engaging presentation. What kind of regular audience engagement do you do, and did it change in any way with Spotify?
Okay. Okay, so with the engagement, we usually do with our normal podcast, so to say. We produce that, we post it on social media, and then we boost it every now and then for the content to move forward. But that's it. With the Spotify, we learn also how to like on daily basis we check on the statistic whether it's growing up or not, and then when it's not, whether or not we can do something on social media platform to like boost that. For example, we have the latest episode was with Ayutami and Adinia Wirasti. Ayutami is a big writer in Indonesia. Adinia is a big actress in Indonesia. But on the day one, the numbers were not too good with the number of play of their episode. What went wrong? What do we have to do now? But then we work with the social media team to mention the fan base of Adinia and Ayutami, and then create another poster, create another thing, create a quiz. So this is something that we don't always do with other podcasts with rigorous check on statistics to know whether we're doing good or not. So this is quite a big change, and also it affects the way we work on new podcasts now, because we want it to visually look cool as well. Because at first maybe we were focusing more on how to push the content, how to produce this beautifully, but not really working on the visual side. This is something also that a crucial learning point for us.
Thanks, Chitra, and thanks for your question, Hui. I wanted Eric. Do you want to jump in and ask your question about how analytics inform content?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not turning on my video. I just want to know
That's fine.
how your analytics are educating your editorial content, your editorial decisions specifically.
Okay. Regarding with the Dear Dearest podcast, because we have set a list of readers and writers, and we also did the recording previously before. So it doesn't affect how we choose because it's already picked, the writers and the readers. But it gives us a new understanding on our audience. For example, we are now comparing the statistics between episodes with female and female, or male and female reader writer. So which combination works best, something like that. And whether should we have one musician for every episodes, or something like that. So we can also tap into Spotify Music to put it on their playlist. So this is also something that we are now thinking for episodes that has not been recorded yet. So I think when you say whether or not the analytics affects your editorial, not in the way the letter is being written, but more on the way who would people love to listen more now. Is it a male voice or female voice, or is it actress, is it musician, and we learn a lot from the internal discussion, because we have to admit that there's an age gap between, for example, me and the audience that we are tapping. It's 18 to 22, and we within our team we have younger people as well. And when we discussed, okay, let's who is on our next list of writers, they can say names which I don't know, and I have to Google them first. And this is also something like, okay, so they are famous. What are they famous for? This is also something. Okay, so the people are getting more famous with, I don't know, many reasons.
Got it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pat, you're next.
Hi, Chitra. This has been fantastic. Hi. I have a question. I mean, I love everything you said about strategy and how you're doing cross promotion now and making sure that content can be repurposed and all that. Is there like one big surprise that you had with entering into this deal with Spotify that you thought, gee, I wish I would have known that would be a long time ago? Something that you've really learned that you could share with everybody?
Oh my God, this sounds like MDIF talk.
Yeah, she was on a call with us this week. She knows how I talk.
I know. Okay, this is something that we learn that I have known. Probably that, I mean, like we all, when we put our content on Spotify, we see the numbers, starts, streams, listeners. We see the retention rate, the completion rate, and everything. So what do we do with that? So at first, at least I thought when we do the publishing, then okay, then hope for the best. Then after we click publish, when it's not, how major or how minor can you do changes on the content itself to reach a bigger audience on the next episode? This is something that I learned a lot. And also I discuss it with the Spotify team, because with other originals, they do story, which is like set on stone. It cannot be move here and there. It's different with Dear Dearest, because with Dear Dearest we have chunks of things that we can just put together, and then when we want to do a new episode with a different structure, we can just put it with different structure. So it's something new that I learned, that with these numbers, you do some actions to have bigger numbers on the following episode. Other than that, it's just like hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So it's we are now doing new podcasts with different formats, different approach, different topics, and I would like to also apply this approach, whether is it possible or not, because it's kind of hard doing that magic actions with a team which is not dedicated. So it's also a challenge for us. With Dear Dearest, it's easy because it's dedicated team. When we change the structure, podcast, okay, do this, we have the team to do that. But with other podcasts, because the team is doing this and that and that and that, so it's kind of something that we should work on within our team as well.
Thank you so much. Fantastic. Alan and Risha, this should be a must for all podcasters. Yes.
Absolutely. In fact, Chitra, we would like your advice on something. So we recently launched Spice Pink, which is our little, we're a bit embarrassed because it is our little podcast experiment. But where we struggle right now is in getting it distributed. I mean, we have it on Spotify, which is fine, but we just don't know how to get people to listen to it. What is the one tip that you have for us on audience acquisition?
I know, that's a really big deal. I mean, like with the latest episode of Dear Dearest, we have both big names on writers and readers, and we have like a very small number. It's like frustrating for us. And we have celebrities. What happened to our other podcasts with no celebrities installed? So it's a challenge, I think. With the use of social media rigorously and doing actively produce audiogram. I see that Spice Beta is doing audiogram now with the previous speakers as well. So it's a good thing. It's a sneak peek that we learn how to do audiogram from our fellow from ICFJ. So every day is learning new thing, whether we do audiogram today or whether we do some infographics on the following day, or what else, what kind of poster that we want to put, what kind of visual that we want to push. And with KBR we have the benefit of having radio network, so we do radio promos and put it on distribution to our partners. So this is something, and we also have news website and active social media. So we do everything we do to put it on the radar of Indonesian podcast listeners. We are still struggling with our news contents. We have to admit that, because news, it's not something that people go to Spotify for. People go to Spotify for entertainment, for chilling out, for to relax, for music, for fun stuff. And Spotify itself has like 1 million podcasts, new podcasts produced every day. So the universe is getting crowded, and we are trying to offer something which are not that people don't come to Spotify for something serious. It's different with podcast listeners in the US, probably, because they can listen to like people talking about politics in an hour or so. Not in Indonesia. It's not something that you can do to Indonesian audience. We are also still learning if we do news, what kind of news. We have repurposed contents from radio programs. Are they doing well, or should we just cut it off from the radio network and just focus on the podcast? Is also something that we are thinking of doing, because we need to focus our energy on certain things. We cannot have everything, unfortunately.
Yep, we've got a lot to learn in that whole Splice Pink space. Chitra, I wanted to ask, if I may, one final question. We should be wrapping up, and I'm so thankful for this session. But I see you as this expert because of your experience, and in the space. You're this expert on how people consume audio products, and it's not just podcasts. You've come from radio. You're talking about the visual aspect of it. You're talking about the appetite of the audiences. I'm curious that if you had a budget and if you had a wish list, what would you see as this gap? What is that major gap that you're seeing in the podcast space with a view to audiences that you wish you could fill?
Wow, that's tough. That's a very good closing question to keep us thinking. Okay. One of the things that we learn also from our journey in doing podcasts is the love of Indonesian people with video, right? It's video celebrities who are doing podcasts are doing both audio and video podcasts. This is something that we don't do. So we only do audio podcasts, and that's it. So maybe if we can leverage our skills and fill in the gaps, trying to reach out for new audience, probably doing more video podcasts on our side. But we are not sure how should we do it, because news podcasts will definitely different with Q&A, with two people talking to each other. We set a table and chairs, and then people sat next to each other and chat. With news podcasts, it's maybe not really like that. Some of the content can be done like that, but not all. Like, for example, we love how we do with storytelling formats. How can we turn that into video podcasts? It's a big question mark for us, but probably we can leverage our skills and our content production, maybe doing some video podcasts also. For some of the contents, maybe we need to selectively craft and pick what kind of topic and format for the video podcast as well. It's also
I wonder if there would be, Sorry. Yeah, no, I wonder if there would be a market for, what you're saying. If 5 years ago somebody had told me that, how about we start up a channel where people watch people playing video games? I mean, I would have laughed, But you're talking about Twitch for podcasts. Let's watch people do podcasts. That might be a whole new thing.
Okay. Okay, like Alan is now thinking.
I have been watching some stuff like this, so I know that this is engaging. Like I would watch podcasters recording it live, and it's been quite interesting. I don't know how to describe it. There are people who watch people eat live.
Yes.
I know. We have a friend that does that.
And she was just here.
But I mean, you're interested in the tools and the tech and the workflow. We want to see how people do their work. And I mean, that's
exactly.
We're all interested.
Absolutely.
One of the most recent viral videos in Indonesia is a 2-hour video watching people doing nothing.
Yes, I remember that story. There was that guy who was just sitting there spacing out for 2 hours. Yes.
Look,
I remember that.
and
What
we do all
a
the
crazy
hard
story.
work, all the promotion, all the magical things that we do, and then we just
Exactly.
sit there and get viral videos. How
Amazing.
unfair!
After all this production, all this editorial work we do, and this guy sits there doing nothing.
No.
And then, blows it all away with millions of people. On that note, we should wrap up, right?
We should. This has
We
been an
should.
amazing session.
I almost feel like asking one of you to wrap it for us. Janicia, we might jump to you one day for the next time, or Laila. Thank you so much, Chitra. That was amazing. We need to talk to you offline about helping us figure out stuff. Always happy to talk to you either in public or in any forum. Thank you everybody for coming. It's been so great. I love that everybody jumped in and chatted. This was wonderful. Big thank you to our sponsors. And please go to splicebeta.com/resources. All of Chitra's video, all the resources, the presentation, it's all going to be on there. Even the chat box.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everybody.